Okay, so here's the problem. I had been attaching the main drive wheels to the robot using a clasp like this. The basic notion of it is that it's a conical shaped hole and or bushing, and as you tighten this nut, it pulls the conical shaped bushing into a conical shaped hole, and that squeezes the bushing around the axle. So then, you know, as you tighten it, it's going to tighten onto that axle there, and you know, it worked okay. But what ended up happening was that the axle could still turn within that bushing. As you can see, this one's really designed. It's a D-shaped axle. It's got a flat section to it. It's really designed to be held in place by clamping something flat against there instead of just trying to generally grip the axle. Anyway, the consequence of that spinning is that the plugs would pull out, because as the axle spun, it would twist up these cables, and that would then disconnect the cables. But worse than that, it would also pull on the cables from inside the motor, and then I'd have to disassemble the motor and repair the wiring in there, pulling through new wiring and resoldering it and whatnot. It was a real faff. It took a long time. So yeah, so what I needed to do was create a new way of attaching this axle onto the robot, and you make use of that D shape there so that it could not spin once it's attached. I am going to continue to use the same approach on the smaller wheels, because they don't develop the same torque as the big one, and so it seems to be working just fine on that. So here's the plan. We're going to have a round section here for the round part of the axle, and a flat section here to grip against that axle part that's flat. So we're going to make that out of 1/2 inch aluminium and some 1/8 inch aluminium for the locking plates, and then that'll fit against the existing armature like that, and it'll line up with the hole there, so we get that through there, and then we'll bring in the wheel, so it'll work like that with this bit here stuck against the flat to keep it from rotating. So that's the plan. Let's see how we can do with that. Alright, so the first thing we're going to have to do is hold the existing arm in place and bore out the existing conical hole to make it cylindrical, and then we're going to have to put a bushing, or create a bushing, that reduces that size of the hole down to the size of the axle. So here we have the bushings in place inside the arms, and we can see that it fits nicely over the axle. Alright, let's go. I'm going to start cutting out the flat plates, what we might call the lock plates, that are going to hold the axle in place. They're going to press against that flat section of the axle so that we can prevent it from turning. You can see here we're just drilling some of the holes. So these holes are being done with a drill right now, but I have to come back and do them with an end mill to bore them out to size, because we want them to be a little bit of a loose fitting. The drill is 5 mils, I want them to be 5.8 mils in diameter. Okay, then we're just going to cut out the individual pieces, and we should be in good shape with those lock plates. Alright, there they are. Work holding there by just screwing them into the spoil board. Alright, so let's go ahead and start cutting out the actual mount, the axle mount sections. And so we're going to once again drill some holes in them so that we can put screws in them to hold them in place while we're cutting around them. We can't have the piece move while we're cutting it, because it'll just break off my tool, as has happened. Alright, so there's the first one. We're going to just look for places on the bit of aluminum that I've got left over, and we're going to cut them out wherever we can find a big enough space. So you can see the work holding there, holding them in place. Got all 4 of them cut out. There's 3 there. There's another one getting worked on. We now have to put some holes through the ends of them so that we can put the bolts through and hold the lock plates up against them. So once again, these are going to be drilled out with the drill, but then bored out with an end mill to make them the 5.8 millimeters diameter that we want, rather than the 5 millimeters diameter of the drill. Alright, there we go. We've got some holes through them now. You can see that they hold the plate in place and they lock against the flat part of the axle, so that's all shaping up nicely. Alright, now we've got to mount these onto the arms. I did try to weld them on, but I ended up just melting the aluminium, so I ended up just wanting to glue them on. So here we are gluing them on. I do have to wait for the glue to dry for a couple of days, so that leaves some time for some other things I've been neglecting. So we'll get back to that, and here we are with it stuck onto the arm, which is good, and it seems to be holding nicely, and here they are in place, all ready to go on both sides, reassembled, and we are back in operation. Let's go.